Hey everyone, welcome to our second class. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about being empathic, being a sensitive person. Now, maybe you have already noticed and identified that you might be a little bit more empathic and sensitive than other people. Maybe you don't know that. Maybe that hasn't been your experience. So I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of what I mean by that, and then also so how it shows up in your life, how you might begin to identify yourself in that way, and then what that might mean for you in terms of the things that you're struggling with or working with, and then some of the tools and processes we can use to help you have that be something that feels like a contribution to your life rather than a challenge or a hardship. So let me just ask you, have you ever walked into a room and just felt really weird or funky? Or have you gotten around a certain friend and felt sad or heavy, or maybe you know how somebody's doing without them even saying a word? Those are good indicators that you might be actually empathic. And I'm just looking here, I have a definition that I put down about what an empath is, and just wanting to find it here. Okay, so empath is a noun, a person thought to have the ability to perceive or experience the emotional state of another individual. So have you ever considered that what you are experiencing might not actually even be yours? Now, I know that can sound a little bit crazy. If this is something new to you, it can sound a little bit crazy. What do you mean? I feel it. It's intense. It must be mine. It must belong to me. However, what if you're actually a lot more sensitive and empathic and in tune with the people around you than you've ever actually given yourself credit for, you've ever really considered? Like I said, can you tell when a friend's upset even though they haven't said anything? Or you walk into a room where there's just been a fight and you can literally feel the tension in the room. That is actually your capacity to perceive what's going on in other people's worlds without any sort of tangible or real world information. It's like, how can I know that? I shouldn't be able to know that. And yet, how much do you actually know that nobody told you, that you were aware of, that you could tap into? For me, this has been huge, and for a lot of my life, I was picking up on and feeling into what was going on with everyone else and everyone around me, but I just thought it was me. I just thought I had a lot of emotional struggles and challenges. I thought I was really screwed up. I felt a lot of the time, and could not figure out what my problem was. I could not figure out why, when I was so incredibly self-reflective and self-aware and did so much soul searching, like trying to understand myself, what was going on for me, could not understand why I still struggled so much, why I still couldn't be happy. And this is a trend I see with a lot of people that have the empathic abilities, is that if they don't recognize them, they just think that they're them, and they try to work out what's going on inside of them, and it just doesn't get them very far. So if you've been kind of grappling with a bunch of stuff in your life, or trying to sort out your stuff for a long time, and it still seems like you have so much stuff to sort, and you just really, what the heck? Why am I not getting anywhere? There's a good chance that what you're trying to sort through is a lot of other people's content. It's not actually your content. And so when you take it on as your content and think that it's you, it gets all kind of twisted up. So let me explain that a little bit. So when you think or that something actually belongs to you, that you're just aware of, so you perceive So let's say you perceive somebody else as being sad, but you think it's yours. So now you're going to go into, okay, why am I feeling sad? What's going on with me? Like, why can't I just be happy? I don't understand why I'm sad. And you're trying to look for the thing inside of yourself that's going to shift it, or that's going to point you to the source of your sadness. And yet the source of that sadness is actually outside of you. It's not inside of you. So you can look and look and look, and you're not really going to find what you're looking for. And then maybe the sadness goes away and you're like, okay, now I feel better. But the next time you're aware of some sadness in your life, or whatever energy it is, could be anxiety, could be stress, all those kind of things. The next time you're aware of something going on around you, it's just going to show up again. So let's say you go to therapy and you're like, I need to work on my stuff, or I need to work on my issues. Unless you're acknowledging that a whole bunch of what is showing up for you actually wasn't even yours, and just things that you're aware of, you're not going to actually get very far. You're just going to be stuck in that place of like more and more and more stuff. And that's what happened for me, is like there was always more stuff to look at, always more stuff to work on, always more feelings that I didn't know where they came from, or how to heal, or what to do with them. And really it was because they weren't mine. It was just what I was perceiving. And you can't really fix, solve, resolve, or heal your way out of something that actually didn't belong to you in the first place. It's sort of like this loop that you just get stuck in, and then wonder why things aren't really changing in your life, or not really making that big of a difference. That awareness for me, that understanding for me, was really critical in creating change for me in my life. Because like I said, I was going with this premise that like anything I experienced, anything that showed up for me, must be mine. The crazy thoughts in my head must be mine. The intense feelings I was having must be mine. And now I got to figure out how to change them, and like what's wrong with me. So I started to identify what was mine and what was not. And one of the ways that I did this was through asking questions about this. So, hey, like, is this sadness even mine? And so I had this one particular experience. I was lying on my bed and I started feeling really sad, and I started crying. And then I came up with a story in my life that went along with it to explain and describe this sadness, and it felt completely reasonable and completely justified. But then I remembered I had been offered this practice of asking, like, is this mine? So I asked myself, is this mine? And the tears and the sadness completely went away. They completely dissipated. I stopped crying, and I couldn't get in touch with the sadness I'd been feeling anymore. And that was like, wow, okay, so if that is not mine, these tears that are streaming down my face are actually not mine, then what else that I've been thinking is me and mine in my life actually might not be. And in that instance, I was aware that the people that I lived in a house with some other roommates, and I was aware that, oh, actually, I think I'm tapping into what's going on with these other roommates. Now, in that instance, I didn't actually check it out with them. I didn't go and knock on the door and say, hey, are you doing okay? Which now, in retrospect, I could have, because that's an incredible information and tool that I could have learned to use. Another time, though, I started feeling really stressed out. I was walking through the woods, least stressful activity you can possibly think of. And all of a sudden I started to feel really stressed about my life. And I was like, what? I wasn't feeling this way just a few minutes ago. Like, where did this come from? What is this? So I started to ask some questions. So the practice of asking questions is sort of this inquiry where you say, oh, okay, so what is this? And I was like, is this even mine? And my premise is that if it shifts or gets lighter for you, then you're onto something. You're onto something that's true for you. So when I said, oh, is this mine? It kind of lightened up. I was like, okay, maybe not mine. And so I got curious. I said, I wonder what am I aware of here, or who could this belong to? And I got a sense that it had to do with a particular friend. So in that instance, I got on the phone and I texted him and I said, hey, have you been feeling stressed at all lately? His answer was yes, like big exclamation point, yes. And so we chatted back and forth and I got a sense of what was going on for him and what he was feeling stressed about. My stress completely went away and I felt fine again. So that's like an example of how being empathic and sensitive might be showing up in your life, and then also how you can inquire into it, use it, and shift it for yourself. So here's just a little checklist I have around, could you actually be super and empathic too? Maybe that's partly what shows up in your world and your experience. So do you have lots of weird feelings and emotions you don't quite understand? So it's like, I feel weird, I feel off, I don't get like, ugh, what's going on? Ugh, I feel weird. Or perhaps you're easily affected by the people around you. So for me, I walk into a room like at a party and I would start to feel so weird and so off and wonder why I had so many social issues and social anxieties. And there was one actually particular instance where I'd been going to this place for parties for a while, and like every time I went there I would feel so weird and so off. And one particular day I showed up and I, like before I walked into the space, I noticed how I was feeling. I was feeling pretty good, pretty upbeat, and I walked in and immediately I was hit with like this other like weird feeling. And I realized at that moment, oh, it's not just me that has social anxiety and is weird and off. It's like I walked in that room and I perceived all of the angst and everything that was going on with the people in that room. And like as soon as I left the room, I felt fine again. So that was like a really big awareness for me. The more that you can pay attention to those kinds of things, how you feel around certain people, how you feel in certain environments, the more information it can give you. Because everything that's showing up in your experience, and we talked about this, I think, a little bit last week, is actually awareness and actually information that you can use to your advantage. So do you have moods and emotions that seem to come out of nowhere and just as suddenly lift? I'll literally be walking down the street and start to feel like unhappy or blue or whatever your words are, and like then I'll go into, if I'm not picking it up right away that it's an empathic thing, I'll start to wonder like, why am I feeling so funky? What? Ugh. But then like, I'll have this heaviness that like is going around with me, and then without really changing a whole lot, boom, it's gone. It's like, oh, I feel back to normal again. I feel fine again. And to me, that's a big indicator that what's going on for me is actually me just picking up on other people's stuff and other people's energy. And we're going to talk more, especially next class, a lot about how to work with that and how to stay in your own energy, not mix up with other people's energy, stay clear. For today, it's a lot more about just getting that awareness and getting that sense of beginning to differentiate between what you experience and what you're just aware of. Another feeling that can show up for people that are sensitive and empathic is, do you feel weird and different? Like maybe you're from some alien planet and that you're just something that you don't get that everybody else seems to have figured out. I know that's been true for me and true for people that I've worked with. Like, what? Like, I don't get it. Let's see, what else here? Oh, another common experience is maybe somebody tells you an emotional or graphic story and you actually feel those feelings inside of yourself. Like, can you feel it? Or have you ever just been listening to maybe a news clip or a story and you get this well of emotion inside of you that just comes up and comes through you? That certainly happened to me. I'll start crying, like, and it doesn't really sometimes matter what the content is, but I'm feeling the emotional experience of what's going on for the people in the story. So those are some examples, and now some of this might be true for you, some of it might not, but these are some examples of how you might be experiencing life as a sensitive or empathic person. And there are others as well. But what I want us to start to look at is to explore for yourself, what am I aware of, and so to start to explore for yourself, where is that space in which you're really functioning from you and you're in your own energy and you're in your own space, and when are you perceiving or aware of what's happening around you? And so often, even with people that aren't particularly empathic, those things are conflated and twisted up together. And so it all gets melded together. You all think it's you, and then you try to work it out when really so much of it isn't actually you. I'm looking at some of the notes from my book, and I say maybe you would just walk by someone on the street. So let's say you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you start feeling crappy or weird, or super worried or stressed out, and bam, you just picked up on somebody else's feelings and emotion, and now you're thinking that it's you. So this is true. This can be true of your emotional state, and like, so how you're feeling energetically, emotionally. It also can be true about your thoughts. And like, if you're having like lots of crazy chatter in your mind, could it actually be that you're aware of the crazy chatter of everyone around you? Okay, is it that you're aware of the mental activity of the people in your life? So let's see, where do I want to go next? I can talk a lot more about that, but I kind of want to give you guys the practical tools to start exploring this for yourself, because I can tell you, and you might be saying, oh yeah, I get that, identify with it, or maybe like, what's she talking about? So for today, we just really want to give you some tools and processes to work with so that you can start to that process of, let me see what is really me, and let me get connected with what's really me, and then we can start to separate out and then work with that. With all of the stuff that's not you, we can learn how to work with it, and then we can learn how to work with what is actually yours. Partly why I introduced this concept and tool toward the beginning of the program is like I was talking about with therapy. If you go to therapy and you bring everything that you have, like you have a big basket of stuff and you bring it all, but only this much of it, small little handful is actually yours, but you're trying to resolve all that other stuff, it's not going to be really an effective use of the process and the tools. So we want to get from the beginning to really the issues and the patterns and the things that actually really are you and yours. So clear out everything else, get to what's you, and then let's work on the like 5 or 10% of your experiences that actually are particularly stumbling over that word, particularly related to you and what's going on for you, because there is that, but a lot of what's showing up for you actually isn't. So like I said, the tool that I have used to identify this and change this for me is just to ask questions. So my favorite question on this regard is this actually mine? And if you ask yourself that and it gets lighter, it didn't actually belong to you in the first place. So the exercise that I want to give you, and Michelle and Kaylin, you've probably worked with this before, but it's a great reminder if you haven't done it in a while. So the exercise is to ask yourself for the next 3 days, for every thought, feeling, emotion, sensation, anything that's showing up in your life, ask yourself, is this actually mine? And if it shifts or gets lighter or changes for you in any way, then there's a very good chance that it didn't actually belong to you. So the reason to do that so consistently, so to practice it for 3 days repeatedly, is that it starts to give you a sense of just how much you're actually aware of and just how much is you. And after 3 days, you start to come into a space of, like, perhaps for the first time, being in touch with the energy and the space and the sense of what is actually you. So you get to that sort of like, wow, I can see me again. I can feel me again. I can be with me again. So that is basically the exercise that I want to offer you for this week, is for 3 days, as much as you can possibly remember, to ask yourself for every thought, feeling, emotion, sensation, point of view, decision, craving, anything like that, just to ask yourself, is this mine? And if it gets lighter, just say, okay, and let it go. Let it go back to wherever it came from. And you can just release it. If you want to inquire into it, you can ask more questions and see what shows up for you. So, is this mine? No. So, who might this belong to? Maybe you get a sense that it belongs to somebody, like, oh, it's my mom. What's going on with my mom? Do I need to work with anything that's showing up for me? So I actually had a friend she was in a lot of turmoil, and I asked her what she was aware of. She said, I'm aware of my friend. It was a mutual friend who was going through a hard time. And she's like, I hate this. I hate how sensitive and empathic I am. She didn't quite use those words, but she knew that she was super sensitive. She's like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I feel the other people so much all the time. So I said, okay, well, does she need anything from you? Is there anything you can do to make it different? And she said, oh, yeah, I can connect with her. I can send her some energy. And so she sent that person energy in her own way. And then it completely shifted for her. And she wasn't carrying around the pain and the struggle of her friend. So those are the kinds of things that you can start to inquire into, like, what am I aware of here? What can I do with it? Is there anything required of me to shift it? And really the asking question process is to just look at when you ask questions and shift things. And so when you ask questions and it shifts something for you, then follow that shift, follow that energy, and see where it can lead you. So again, who is this mine? If it lifts and shifts, okay, great. If you get a sense, oh, actually this isn't mine, is there anything I need to do with it? Do I need to know who it belongs to? Is it, is there something I can contribute here? Because sometimes you can be aware also that something is not yours, and it can still be very intense in your space, and you can feel it very intensely. And so that's the times when more information is required, more content is, so it's like not just enough. Like, there have been times that I've been aware of my mom and I'm aware of her, but it's still really intense. I know that it's not me. I know that it's her energy. It still feels really intense. And so in order for me to shift that experience, it requires me maybe picking up the phone and calling her and say, hey, mom, how are you doing? Or like the example of my friend who is stressed, when I texted him, that feeling of stress just went away. So this is something that I invite you for the duration of this course, and really for the rest of your life, to play around with and get a feel for. And in your personal calls, we can talk more about how you can apply that, or if there's something coming up for you and you want to know how to use it or work with it yourself. But you can begin to explore and feel into this and play around with this as a tool in your toolkit that can start to shift and change things for you. So again, it's just the practice of, is this mine? And if it feels lighter or shifts for you, it wasn't yours in the first place. And just make it a habit for the next 3 days to ask yourself for every thought, feeling, emotion, or sensation that shows up for you, is this mine? Because the tendency is just to assume, yeah, it is. I experience it. Yeah, it is. Like, I'm in a funk. It's my funk. What if it's actually not? And that's what I want to gift you is that experience of that different possibility. If you tap into it, if you feel into it and ask some questions around it, you might start to notice that, wow, a lot of all of this is me holding other people or me picking up on the energy of other people, and maybe I could let it go and have a lot more space and peace inside myself. So let me know if you have questions. Let me know if what comes up for you. I'm here to help you and guide you through integrating the tools into your own life. Part of the goal of this program is not only just to give you the tools, but to show you how you can apply them yourself and you can use them yourself, so that you're really getting that integrated personal experience of, here's the tools, but here's how I can use them and how they particularly apply to me and my own life. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop the recording, and then I'll open it up for conversation and questions. Let me just find my spot here.